Hello and welcome to the Providence College Podcast. I'm your host, Liz Kay, and I'm joined by producer Chris Judge of the class of 2005. Here at the Providence College Podcast, we bring you interesting stories from the Fryer family. Today we're talking with Daniel Arteaga, a senior at PC. Daniel, the president of campus ministry, traveled to the Solomon Islands this summer as a Feathersmith fellow. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. How's the start of your senior year going so far?
Thank you so much, Liz, for inviting me to the Providence College Podcast. Senior year is definitely busy, more busy than I thought, but beginning with great graces, honestly.
Wonderful. Now, you've had a busy summer as well. Can you tell me a little bit about your Feathersmith Fellowship? Can you tell me about the fellowship in general?
Sure. So the Providence College Feathersmith Fellowship is a program through the Office of Mission and Ministry here at Providence College, and you apply through a three-stage process, and you develop a service project, or you could also study abroad as well. However, when you apply for the service project, you contact a specific site, usually in the history of the program. This is about, I believe, year 10 of the Smith Fellowship program. You find a site that students have gone to in the past, or you could develop a new site, and you contact that site and see if you could go to that specific site during the summer. You develop a certain project there. So I chose the Solomon Islands, which has been historically one of the kind of the best sites, I think, in my opinion. I'm a little biased. But I chose the Solomon Islands, which fellows have been going to for the last 9 years, and where Archbishop Christopher Cardone, class of 1980, and Dominican Friar of the Province of St. Joseph, he is currently there as the Archbishop. So students have been going there to visit Bishop Chris when he was just a bishop for the last 9 years. So I decided when I first started to look at the fellowship program, and I was kind of discerning which location, that the Solomon Islands kind of had this specific gravity towards it. It was I think the combination of faith stories and the combination of the service and the faith, and having a familiar face, Archbishop Chris, who knows Providence College, graduated from here, and is a Dominican, was kind of really, the gravity was towards there. And so I decided to begin my application process in last September, and you go through 3 stages. You contact the site, and we were contacting with a sister in Sydney who was doing processing all of the applications for fellows who wanted to go to Sydney and who wanted to go to Solomon Islands. And so we were doing all of our processing with her, and after about 2 stages in the application process, we submitted a final proposal in December, and then we were notified in February that we had been awarded the Feathersmith Fellowship.
It's wonderful. And what's kind of the goal or the mission of the fellowship?
Sure. It's to experience really the Dominican charism somewhere else in the world. Here at Providence College, we are so blessed to have the Dominicans, and they've been a huge part of my life. However, to see the Dominican charism in a different community, in a completely different country, really provides kind of a different understanding of that charism in and of itself. And so I would say that that's the mission of the program, is for you to kind of lose yourself in service, lose yourself to, I think, God's own providence, and then really to discover yourself and to discover God, and the uniqueness of yourself, and sharing that with others who are there in a completely different location.
Can you tell us a little about the work you were doing?
Sure. So it was actually kind of funny. When we got there, we kind of didn't really know exactly what we were going to do. It was a very funny feeling. I went with one of my best friends, Tommy Heverin, also my class, 2019, and that was a huge blessing as well. The fact that we both were able to receive the fellowship and go together. I actually remember when we first got the email, that we had received the fellowship, we were actually having dinner in Ray at that very moment. And he just goes, he lifts up his phone and he goes, dude, look at your phone. I was like, what is it? And so I grabbed my phone. I was like, oh my goodness. And, all of our friends were somehow around. So, news spread very, very quickly. And so, it was a great grace to be able to go with him. But it was very funny when we first got there. We were saying to ourselves, like, we actually really don't know exactly what we're doing. We were prepared for kind of anything, which is a very funny feeling. And so when we first got there, Archbishop Chris had picked us up in his truck from the Honiara International Airport when we first landed on the island, and that was Memorial Day. And so, we get into the truck, introduce ourselves and everything, and we're talking with him, and then he just goes, "You're gonna be working in school." So we just looked at each other. We're like, "Okay." And so for 4 of the weeks, Tommy and I worked at a school called Bishop Apale. It's a secondary school as well as a primary, and I taught theology for 4 weeks. It was all kind of a surprise. I went in and met one of the head teachers of the theology department there in the secondary school, and he said, "Can you teach the Gospel of Luke and discipleship in the Gospel of Luke?" And I said, "Okay." And so from that point on, I had some of my class notes from all my time here at PC, from my theology classes. I had brought some extra reading, and I just developed 4 weeks of lectures in my off time when I was in the teacher's lounge, just writing lectures down and making sure that I had enough content to teach over 4 weeks. So that's kind of what I did in the secondary school. In the primary school, though, I got the really cool opportunity, because I wasn't teaching so many theology courses. I got the opportunity to just go into the second grade and just talk to them. At first they were incredibly shy, very, very shy, of kind of a foreigner, of a new person coming into their classroom. I thought I was going to get a whole bunch of enthusiasm at first, but it took a little bit, probably about one more time when I came in, that the floodgates opened. The kids were asking me questions left and right. They asked me every single kind of animal in the world. Have I seen this animal? They would ask me questions about the United States. Where is the United States? I pulled out a map. I showed them, where the United States is, how far we had traveled, our flight patterns. I showed them where my family's from, Colombia, South America, and I just brought in pictures of my family and my friends, and to every single picture, every picture, without fail, they would say, "They look exactly like you," even though most of them were not my family. So, it was very funny. They would always just point out someone and say, "That person is beautiful. That person is," et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so they provided a lot of joy. And we played games left and right, and that was the 4 weeks. So it was teaching mostly, and then on our 5th week, we went to actually a different island with Archbishop Chris to attend an ordination that he was about to do of a man to the diaconate, and that was beautiful. And then after that, we spent an entire week on this island. While Archbishop flew back to Honiara, we stayed in the island of Maleta and attended a retreat with the Legion of Mary, which was a great opportunity. This was a remote parish, and so we got a really beautiful opportunity to be completely off the grid, and just spend it with a great group who had ties to PC, surprisingly. One of the priests here, his name is Father Michael Torsuda, he's getting his graduate degree in Scripture from Providence College. It's from the Solomon Islands. And to our surprise, he was this Legion's chaplain. And so, we were standing there, we were like, how on earth do we already have a connection to Providence College here. So we spent a week there, and then our final week we spent back in Honiara, kind of, tightening up loose ends, seeing all our friends, doing a bit of shopping for our family and friends. So that's kind of how the fellowship in a nutshell was.
So it sounds like you encountered quite a few alums at Providence College in the Solomon Islands.
Yes, actually. And so a very funny story, too, was that, Archbishop, we stayed at Holy Cross Cathedral with Archbishop. We were in his residence with him. And Holy Cross Cathedral, at the very top is Archbishop's house. There's a big porch that he built, and you can find anyone and everyone on this porch. The funny joke to us was that, one day you'll meet another bishop that's just sitting there, and the other day you'll just meet about 10 new people that just walked right up, and they're cousin to this guy, that's that person's brother. You'll meet everybody on this porch, and we were saying that there at Archbishop's residence, you met every type of person, and so it was very funny because one day I just walked up to the porch, and sitting there was an alum from Providence College, Sam Rosengarten. He had graduated last December, and he was in my contemporary moral problems class with Father Nick my sophomore year in the spring semester. So I had gotten to know Sam that semester, and last December before he graduated, I bumped into him, and I was asking him, what are you thinking about doing? And he said to me, I have no idea. Unbeknownst to me, later that day, he went and talked to Father Nicanor about what he was going to be doing the next year, and then Father Nick suggested, why don't you go to the Solomon Islands for several months? And Sam said, sure. And so he went out to the Solomon Islands, and I eventually found out that he was there, but I didn't think that we were going to see him. And lo and behold, we go onto Archbishop's porch, and there Sam is. After several months of not seeing him, and it was Tommy, myself, and Sam, and we were just talking about Solomon Islands, talking about the experiences that we had. Sam was actually on the same island as us, except on a completely remote side of it. So he was about 4 hours by motorboat going around the island from the city where we were, which is Honiara. And so he was on Guadalcanal with us. And so it was very funny because, how do you see another PC grad in another completely different place, especially one that we had considered so far away?
Well, we've talked a lot about the Solomon Islands. Can you tell us more about the region and your travel there and the languages they spoke? Because you discussed that a lot on your blog. Sure,
yeah. So it's more than 9,000 miles away from Rhode Island. I'm a Pawtucket native, and we had taken it was a flight from Boston to LA to Sydney. We spent about a weekend in Sydney, and there we met with the sister who we had been in contact with throughout our fellowship, throughout the beginning of our fellowship application, rather. And we also met up with two other PC students, Grace Kuntz and Adriana Perry, who were doing a fellowship in Sydney at a special needs school called St. Lucy's. So they were spending their time there, and we had met up with them there with Sister Rosemary, who was our primary contact. And we had an orientation that week, spent about 5 days in Sydney, did some sightseeing, and some meetings with Sister, with some other people in Australia that had gone to Solomons or had spent time in Solomons. So Sister was, we call her the Great Connector. She herself had spent a lot of time in Solomons, and she knew of all of the people who had been to Solomons, spent time in Solomons, that were currently residing in Australia. And so she had connected us with all of them, which provided a great insight for us, even even prior to us going to Solomon's. We got tips from certain people of cultural tips, etc. Information that we just needed to know before we got there.
What sorts of things were they telling you or helping you understand?
I think just relationships, just how like friendships work, kind of the everyday things. What is a Solomon Islander like? What are they going to be like to you? Which is just, they just want to be your friends. They just want to be your friends, and it's a very strong type of friendship that they will have with you, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And this is something that was reiterated from person to person who has been there. And so they were really just relaying to us kind of what are we going to see? What are we going to hear? Who are we going to meet? And they really helped us to just, calm down a bit. I think it's very easy to come in very, uneasy to a completely different place, to somewhere that you're not really sure what you're going to do, and to not really know anyone there. We had only really known Archbishop Chris through a little bit of correspondence, but we were really going in without much, which I think causes a certain sense of uneasiness. So I think having these connections were incredibly valuable to us. As far as the language there, it's Pidgin. It's a broken form of English. And they also speak English as well as their native languages. There are over 70 different native languages among the islands. Pidgin is the uniting factor, and then they also speak English in school. And so it's not uncommon to find one of the students that we were working with that knew 4 or 5 languages. They kind of all know certain, words for things, like, for example, good night. We learned about 7 ways of saying good night. You thought you had like one down, and then someone was just like, oh, this also means good night. So I was actually just looking at a list on my phone of 7 ways to say goodnight. And I would put in, what particular region this is from, and you would have to kind of have to memorize who was from where, because Honiara, the city of Honiara on Guadalcanal, is kind of the melting pot of a lot of different islanders from all around the 100 islands that are inhabited, and so they come there for education. So we really got the whole experience, a lot of experience from all the different regions of Solomon Islands, which is very, very cool. And everyone kind of had their own subculture that you were really putting yourself in, and they were teaching you of their island and their culture, etc. And then there was this uniting factor, this what is Solomon Islands in general, and across the board it was deep friendship, it was deep love that they had, and deep joy.
And so when you were teaching the students in school, were they from all different islands, or were they mostly from Guadalcanal?
So they were from all different islands. However, the main 2 islands that they were from were Guadalcanal and Maleta, the island that we eventually visited.
And I'm curious how your theology major and your philosophy major here at PC kind of prepared you for the getting thrown into the deep end of teaching theology to these secondary students.
Yeah, I think it prepared me very well. I found myself, once I heard teach the Gospel of Luke and discipleship in the Gospel of Luke, I kind of said to myself, oh gosh, okay, game time. Here we are. Like, it's implementing every single class that I've had in theology, not just scripture, but all of the other different disciplines in theology, and implementing them now. And so I kind of panicked for like a second. Then I said to myself, well, I have everything that I need. I have some notes on my laptop. I have these books that I brought with me. Now it's just time to piece the puzzle together, which was incredibly exciting to me, someone who's always kind of been inclined to teaching. And so I found myself under this huge puzzle that I was creating. And I kind of had this skeleton. I had one title, Discipleship in the Gospel of Luke. And I ran with that, and I put puzzle pieces together, and created kind of a comprehensive guide of not just the gospel, but really a guide in the Christian life. Different expositions on the problem of evil, on specific philosophical problems, and then ending with an exposition on grace, and why is this necessary in the Christian life, and what is the aim? And these were all themes that I had gathered in my theology classes. I drew heavily on my Catholic social thought class from Father Albino Barrera, one of my greatest teachers, as well as Father Nicanor, my contemporary moral problems class. I taught on the basis of love and relationship, that this relationship in between us and God is now a personal one, through Jesus Christ himself, who became man. And so that relationship is one that is personal. And so I brought that, and I would always tell the kids, I would always tell them, I'm not against you. I'm here to teach you, and I'm here to bring all of these different ideas, and I know it's going to be on a test. It'll be on a test, don't worry. But I'm going to give you all of the answers, and they will be clearly laid out. But I want you to remember this as something that is not just for a test, but rather for your relationship with God. That you come to know him and to love him ever deeper. That is my goal.
I feel like when I read your blog, you had some really vivid descriptions of the way the people that you were meeting in the Solomons were living their faith. Either these very expressive rituals that many people here would recognize with Mass and sing the Angelus regularly. Can you tell me a little bit about that, about how the people in the Solomons lived their faith?
Sure. It was a huge culture shock on our part, because here in the United States, faith is such a kind of a privatized thing. It's a very individual thing. The only time you really get to see it is at Mass or community worship, And so going from this culture to one that is heavily steeped in religion was definitely shocking. But it was deeply beautiful too, because I think one of the prime examples of this was our Corpus Christi that we had there. So on the feast of Corpus Christi, there's usually a Eucharistic procession that happens, where the consecrated body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ in the host is brought about in a procession, kind of usually through the streets, etc. And that happens here in the United States too. However, that Sunday when we were there at the cathedral, it was an incredible experience, because it showed everything that the Solomon people were. Church is not just something that is compartmentalized. It's not one part of their life, but rather it is their life. It's something where they go to church and they draw everything from that. They draw their strength, they draw, their love and their joy, etc. Everything revolves around, Christ himself. And so to see kind of that reversal was incredibly beautiful, in the sense that this feast was now even more celebrated. You saw that it was deep devotion, and so it was very cool, because that Mass that we went to was when they had all the cultural dancers. They had been practicing for weeks for this Mass, and so the girls and the guys had separate dances that they all do something different. So the guys do one dance, the girls do another, and then they follow the Eucharist. They follow Bishop holding the Eucharist, going through the cathedral campus that we were on, because it was on a hill. So he was going up from the cathedral up to the top of the hill, and everybody was following suit. And they were singing this beautiful song, this Ave Maria song, that was in their language, and it was incredibly striking, because you saw everybody follow suit, behind the Eucharist, and end at the top of this hill. where in the beating heat, you saw everybody just with such joy and devotion and love, and true, I think, understanding of what they were following, and rather I should say who they were following. Christ Himself made present in the Eucharist, which was incredible. And I think a really cool moment, I wrote about this in one of my blogs, the blog specifically about this feast day, was that there was one Solomon kid that climbed one of the trees as the procession was passing by. Climbed one of the trees just to see the procession. And I thought to myself, like, that's hysterical, actually, because that happens exactly in the gospel. This is Zacchaeus climbing the sycamore tree. This is someone who just wants to see Jesus. And that was deeply striking. That I think that is the prime example of a Solomon Islander and how they live their faith. Because it's not just a procession. It's not just a ritual act, but rather it's, this is my king who's walking by. And they have such a beautiful understanding of that they would climb a tree to see it. They would climb a tree to see him.
That's really moving, and it sounds like it affected you.
Most definitely. Yeah. It most definitely did.
The work that you were doing in the Solomons, it sounds like it might have been a natural extension of the work you were doing with campus ministry. Can you tell us a little bit about the projects you've been involved in here on campus?
Sure. So last April, the campus ministry staff had decided that I was going to be president for next year. I submitted an application, and this was one of my choices. And so they gave the decision, and they had given me the role of president for this upcoming, for this academic year that's here now. And so my role in campus ministry kind of has evolved in the last several years. I started out sophomore year as liturgical ministries coordinator. I coordinated all the altar servers, Eucharistic ministers, etc., that serve at all 4 Sunday masses on, here on campus. And then last year, I was a student minister for worship on the executive board. And one of my projects with Bilingual Masses, I brought those to Providence College. And with the help of many, many individuals who all throughout campus were helping me to create these events, which were wonderful successes. We worked well with OLAS, the Organization for Latin American Students, and different members of campus ministry to really put these events together. And then this year, becoming president has definitely been a very interesting experience. I think now more than ever is a call to service, is a deep call to service in a way that wasn't there prior. I think it's much more emphasized this year, rather, I should say. Because as a president, and we just had executive training with all of the clubs last night, and something that really struck me was all the presidents were together, and someone said, like, now more than ever, is the time to kind of lose yourself in the hidden work, to kind of do things in the hidden, so that they're not going to be recognized. But it is deeply important that you have joy in them, whether it be an email, whether it be, setting up somewhere or taking down something or cleaning this or cleaning that. These works that are kind of in the hidden that no one will see are really kind of the places where you're going to draw the most strength. Because a lot of the work of the president is to make sure that events are happening, that the members of your organization are doing well. You're meeting here and there, left and right. You're representing things. You're going different places all throughout campus, from meeting to meeting to meeting. And really, a lot of that is hidden. A lot of that is not really. It's not really out there. And that's actually, I think, one of the best parts about it, because even though it might be monotonous, or it might be it's not in the limelight or anything, but there, I think, you get to see kind of the hidden service of Christ. You get to see all of those different things that, even though they may be small, done with great love, can really, really provide a beautiful thing for someone. Whether it be cleaning up something, whether it be meeting with one person, or sending an email at whatever hour of the night. You do it with great love. Though it may be small, it could be transformative.
I think there have been some changes this year. I mean, you mentioned Bilingual Masses, bringing those into the mix at Providence College, and they've been a success. I'm curious how many people attend and how often they're held.
Sure. So Bilingual Masses were started actually my sophomore year, and they were very popular at the beginning of my sophomore year. They dwindled a little bit towards the end, but the idea, I think, continues. Whether it's done this year or not, I'm not sure. That's under one of our student leaders now. But the idea continues, which is the intersection of faith and culture, which was something that I was very passionate about and continue to be, because of my own, Colombian culture background. I'm a first-generation American, and my parents immigrated from Colombia in 1992, and so my whole life has been this intersection of faith and culture. You see the beauty of the faith in the culture, and you see the beauty that culture can give to faith. It's this helping hand kind of idea. And so when I came to Providence College, I thought to myself, how do these two continue to help one another? How can I implement something here where it expresses exactly what I feel, which is that Christ Himself is made present exactly where we are, and for a lot of people that could be hearing Mass in their own language, and so that was kind of one of my primary concerns was, this is one of the most intimate things that a person has, is their prayer life with God. And so if they can't hear it in their language, a very personal thing, then are we helping the students? And so that was kind of my primary concern, was how can we meet the student where they are in one of the aspects of their life that is most important, which is their prayer life.
Daniel, I'm curious, you grew up so close to Providence and Providence College. What made you decide to come to this campus?
Sure. So, like I said, native Rhode Islander. I had always heard about Providence College, but I kind of had never really wanted to come. I never really saw myself like coming to PC. I don't know. It was a very, I don't know, it was just PC was there. I had one friend that came here, but other than that, I didn't really have any interest. However, being the procrastinator that I am, I went on a tour here on campus the summer right before my senior year. Usually you're supposed to start that your junior year apparently, but once more, the procrastinator I am. But nonetheless, I came to campus, and after my tour, there was this gut feeling. There was this feeling of, this could be the place. And I remember talking to my mom after this tour, and she said, if you can see yourself doing the everyday, going to the cafeteria, going from class to class, then if you can see yourself doing those things that are kind of, I guess, very small things that you do in your day, if you can see yourself doing that here, and this is probably the place for you, then it indicates a home. It indicates somewhere where you can do the everyday, where it's not something that's grandiose, that's difficult, etc. You're living in it. And so I thought about that a lot, and I said to myself, I can see myself doing those things. I can see myself going from class to class. I can see myself building relationships with professors in the theology department, etc. And I said, this must be the place then.
And did you always know that theology and philosophy were the subjects you were interested in?
I had not always known that. However, my sophomore year of high school is when I really started to take my faith seriously, and I think from that point on, I had a desire to now understand the faith more, so as to practice it better, and it's been exactly that. I always say, it is a great grace to me to be able to study, the God whom I pray to. It's a great grace, it's a helping hand as well. What I'm studying, I can actually take to prayer. One of the things I always say is, it's always incredibly funny to me when I'm reading, for example, St. Thomas Aquinas, that I'm not just reading him, but I can actually pray to him so that he can, intercede for me to understand him better. I'm sure a lot of students, probably do that. But it's a great grace, the fact that I can, if I'm reading Bernard of Clairvaux, I can ask Bernard to help me to understand his writing better and to intercede for me and to pray that I get the grace of understanding. And that will help my prayer life. Those writings and those all of those different things are not just academically, understanding the faith better, but it also helps my own prayer life and to put into practice what I am doing. It has helped me in the various friend crises, etc. When you're meeting with people, you bring all of these themes, you bring all of these things in to your meetings. These are when someone has a faith crisis, or someone is spiritually down or something like that, or they don't know where God is. All of these different things actually are helping you to formulate some kind of answer, to formulate some hope that God is ever with them. And so that's kind of the short answer of me really thinking about theology as a major and philosophy as a minor.
And Providence College is a unique place because obviously the Catholic and Dominican nature of the college and the work of campus ministry is very central to the college, but you don't have to be Catholic to come here. Can you tell me a little bit of how you make, I know campus ministry does a lot of outreach to people of all faiths and all faith backgrounds and levels of devotion. Can you talk a little bit about how campus ministry works with those folks?
Sure. So it's through actually one of our most popular programs, peer ministry, that happens here on the campus. Peer ministry was created about 4 or 5 years ago with a small group of students that wanted to create small faith-sharing groups. It's the intersection of faith and college, where students will come in and they'll be able to just talk about everything that's going on. It's especially important for freshmen who, they're at a lot of crossroads. They're facing questions that are gigantic. It's questions about faith, about God, about who they are. And so these groups help to address those questions with others who are asking them. And so that has actually been one of our I think, most popular programs, because it's this space in which students, regardless of faith background, regardless of, I guess, intensity of devotion, etc., they are able to just be and to really just start talking. And that's, I think, one of the key, themes of campus ministry, is that we want to meet the person. We are an organization that is pointed towards God with the person. They're right beside us, and we are holding their hand through it all.
Well, Daniel, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. We really appreciated talking to you about your experiences here. Subscribe to the Providence College podcast in all the usual places, including iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Google Play. If you like what you hear, please review and share with others. Thanks for listening, and go Friars.